Hello, everyone. Welcome to Their Journey, a sit down with the National Digest. I'm your host, Eric Mastrota, and today we are once again speaking with Marilyn Redmond, a counselor, medium, spiritual minister, author, and so much more. For those of you who are new here, this is actually our third episode together, so I highly recommend pausing and going to watch our previous two episodes with Marilyn before embarking on this one. Today, we're going to be talking even more about the deep changes that come from inner transformation, offer some guidance, and have some viewer submitted questions throughout as well. So without further ado, hello, Marilyn. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm terrific today. Thank you for asking. And how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here with you, truly. Thank you again. I wanted to get us started today because towards the end of our previous conversation, we were touching on some resources and reliable places one can go to when it comes to find healing. So we're going to start with a question actually from Gina from New York, who asked, with so much out there online, how do you suggest someone navigate misinformation to find actual reliable sources of empowerment and healing? And what resources or support systems would you recommend for someone trying to leave a toxic situation and find their own empowerment?
Oh, that's a big question. I didn't even know I needed help when I got into this. I actually, during a death ride with my ex-husband at the time, we were married at the time, and he was trying to kill me in this car ride. And I said, God, please help me. I really don't want to die.
Mm,
And lo and behold, opportunities started coming to me I did never hear about before.
mm,
Um, I found 12-step programs through treatment. I discovered I'd been addicted to Valium. And in that, going to treatment for codependency, um, I discovered that there's a program called Al Anon, who is for relatives and family and friends of alcoholics. And my husband was an alcoholic.
mm,
And so as I went to treatment, I found out for the first time I had a disease. Now, if somebody had told me I was sick and had a disease, I wouldn't have understood it. But through treatment, I came to understand I needed spiritual help to resolve it. And that opened the door to many going to places that were necessary for me to resolve my problems that were going on, as the domestic violence, etc.
mm,
And I found I had to go to a battered women's shelter. Um, we were on a trip and he abandoned me out of state, and I ended up in a battered women's shelter for help in Oregon. I'm from Washington State.
mm,
But when I got home, I went to the local battered women's shelter and took classes. Fortunately, I didn't have to live there, but the classes were helpful, so helpful. So, along with my spiritual program, I also of the 12 steps, I also found myself in a spiritual group called Edgar Casey's Search for God.
mm,
And I had been praying for how do you find groups that meditate in a group. I knew how to meditate on my own, but I knew groups were stronger and more supportive. So lo and behold, through I don't call them coincidences today, but I had a lady friend I went to lunch with, and she mentioned the ARE, and I said, "What's that?" And she explained it's the Association for Research and Enlightenment.
mm,
And so I said, "Well, can I come to your meetings?" And guess what?
mm,
I not only found more answers that I needed to open my heart, but I've also found the fellow that's been in my life ever since. So,
mm,
uh, the I found a healthy man in a healthy group, and that was necessary in my case. I I had to learn how to be around a healthy person,
mm.
and when you're in the problems that we've been discussing over these sessions,
Yeah,
all I knew was fear, guilt, and shame.
right.
And my mother taught me judgment really well. And so when you're around a person that has no judgment, is always supportive, always caring and respectful, that was a new comfort zone. And I went into anxiety.
Mm,
And I discovered that through my recovery, um, my, well, in 12 steps, you have sponsors. And she said, you get yourself back up there and learn how to be around a healthy person. And it took me literally months to be around that man and go through the anxiety of learning to leave the fear behind and trust and come into the love that was around me in the, for a first time in my life.
Mhm.
And how to deal with it. The Al-Anon program gave me tools so I could respond in loving communication, sharing my feelings. I could trust him. I couldn't trust my family. So trust was a big issue for me. So I had to put myself in healthy places that gave me tools and that gave me support and a path, a spiritual path to outgrow my disease, not only codependency, but I had other addictions I won't go into right now, but I had to outgrow all that and come out of my childhood. I had shut down at the age of 3. I had to learn how to grow up.
Mhm.
And so today I can say I actually have grown up. I don't act and react from fear, that trying to survive and protect myself today. I can feel safe. I can share what I need to share without being hurt. We don't want to hear what you say, Marilyn.
Mhm.
It's okay to be excited and happy. Well, my parents were mentally ill, very depressed, and they didn't want anybody happy around them.
Mhm.
So I've had to teach myself to laugh and be happy.
Mhm.
I had to grow into the recovery, and it isn't happening overnight.
Right.
I've been in recovery one day at a time for 40 years. And I keep learning better ways to handle my life. I've just gone through some very expensive scams and so forth, and still one is pending. And I can handle them without huge fear and craziness and panic and whatever. Today, in a rational way that is a mature way to handle life. I didn't know how to handle life. It's a growing up for me anyway. It was growing up into how do you do these things in a way that is not going to be over reactive from fear, and how to handle it from being in a calm, rational place and just to do the next right indicated thing, not to be triggered from my past problems that caused, the trauma and problems of that I was raised in. So it's a matter of changing my mindset and opening my heart so I can handle life on life's terms.
Mm.
I did not know how to handle life. In fact, I was trying suicide at one time to get out of it because I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, yeah, I mean, even going right off of that, talking about these first steps and everything, my next question kind of falls along those lines of how can someone begin to heal while they're still living in a challenging or unsafe environment? Would you kind of recommend, like what you were just talking about, looking for those resources and things that are around you too, and other quote unquote like safe spaces?
That is a really good question. In my case of being so codependent, I found Al Anon was the best support I could get, along with answers from. Um, I also started attending spiritual churches and the battered women's shelter, and I had a very good counselor who actually was a psychiatrist and helped people with the kind of problems we're talking about. He worked with a lot of 12-step people. He understood the program and could help me get answers that I wouldn't maybe get in the program, and move forward better. So getting the people who have been there or have worked with people who have been there
Mm.
to support you and guide you through how to handle the next thing that comes up. Or I found that um, it was really, really tough. Probably the toughest thing I've ever done, as I was so codependent. I told my husband I needed a temporary separation.
Mm.
I got him out of the house. And when he was out of the house, I could work on the things I was learning of how to change and become, and the threat wasn't there.
Mm.
And as I kept going to my Al Anon meetings, he would show up and we would try to have a discussion and try, we were wanting to resolve this, but he never went for the help that I got. He wasn't there. That's another story. He never did get well. But the point is, as I got my self power back, my self esteem back, and my self understanding of I had the right, to take care of myself. I was a responsible person. That threatened him.
Mm.
He couldn't handle somebody having power because he wanted power over me. That's what it was all about.
Yeah.
And so as I started getting healthier, he would leave and then he'd come back thinking he had, he'd bear down on me more. And that's when you need support.
Right.
If you're starting to get well and the other person can't handle it.
Mm.
So don't give up on your background of the people that are there that you've gone to for help, and they'll give you answers and support. So each time you're a little stronger when you, in our case, we probably separated a dozen times trying to work it out, only it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But as each time I got stronger with my own self-esteem and self-love, and that's what I never had. That's why I couldn't speak up.
Yeah. Yeah, and speaking of those initial moments of finding even just like little times and moments of strength too, when you're starting this type of journey, we have a question from Shane from Texas who asked, what advice would you give to someone who feels isolated and unsure of where to turn to for help? And what specific practices or steps helped you find the courage to take action when you were feeling powerless and afraid?
Well, as I said, my first words were, God, please help me.
Right.
I don't want to die because when I got to treatment, they said I was in the last stages of alcoholism. Well, I've discovered Valium was the ultra dry martini.
Mm.
And the psychiatrist had given me Valium. And so when you find, in my case, I found treatment. It was through prayer. Um, and through that opened up other avenues for counseling and help. And I started going to spiritual groups, spiritual churches instead of religious churches.
Mm.
There's a difference. And I just had to, when an opportunity to get help in a new way for me that I wasn't familiar with, I would put my toe in the water and try it.
Mm.
I was always very scared to move out of my comfort zone. And somebody suggested this person I go to. I never had heard of flower essences, had no clue what that was about. And she says, "Oh, I think you ought to go to my friend. She might be able to help you." And I showed up, and I discovered you can reframe your thinking, and the flower essences have pure love in them.
Mm.
There's nothing toxic, and it supports you loving yourself. And you can reframe your language in your head and your heart to be loving and supportive. And so instead of a fear-based person, I started claiming the positive, the affirmation. I affirmed the truth rather than lived in the lies that I'd been taught and grew up with.
Right.
So when you start moving into the truth, you start to recognize anything negative isn't going to work for you. You've been there, done that.
Yeah.
You want to move into being a positive person. And through all the years of using the flower essences, and I became a flower essence practitioner,
Mm.
help others reframe the negative into the positive. Take the flower essences, help push out the negative energy because we are energy beings. So get rid of the negative energy, let it flow out. Feel and experience whatever negativity, let it go. My sponsor said, let go. Yeah, yippee skippy, it's leaving.
Mm.
And then you have space for the real answers and the real love to come in and replace what was causing all the trouble. You can get out of your fear-based life and move into a love-based life. So anything that is positive, and I started using meditations off the internet, and I started using CDs. In my bedroom, I have a CD player. If I have a real problem and I can't seem to go into meditation myself, I'll put the CD on. There's lots of tools to help you And when you get into recovery programs, I went several times to women's groups that were recovery group of women that weren't 12 steps, it was counseling type group. And there's lots of opportunities if you want to look for them. Pray for God to bring them to you. That's where I would, and that's what happened to me is God brought these opportunities when I was open and willing to put my big toe in and see if it would work.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. Yeah, next we have a question you already touched on, so you don't need to go too much into it. But Emma from Pennsylvania did want to know and asked, what was the turning point for you when you realized it was time to leave your abusive environment? And how can someone prepare themselves emotionally and spiritually to leave an abusive relationship or environment?
Well, to tell you the truth, it didn't happen overnight.
Mhm.
When I found out that I was emotionally 3 years old, I was stuck as a 3 year old, and that's why I was acting like I was. I was everything a 3 year old would be afraid of. I was afraid of. I saw my dad beat up my mom, and I thought I was going to be beat up next. And I've all my life I never felt safe until recently. Actually, it's taken that long to be totally feeling safe around people that I know I can take care of myself. And over the time as it grew that I could get that self-esteem and self-love, my husband and I separated many times. Finally, I kept thinking, that we would get back together, but I discovered, that hope was not rational. As my sponsor told me, that's not rational. She understood how sick he was. And so it was a gradual process of me getting healthy enough to finally tell him when things were never getting better, um, in many ways. Okay, he still wanted control, and so finally, as I got healthier, I started divorce papers. I couldn't go through with it the first time. I still wasn't mature enough to think I could make it on my own.
Mm,
So then I tried again, divorce papers the second time. I'm still growing. I think I can do it now.
mm,
No, couldn't go through with it the second time. By the third time, I needed restraining orders and a divorce decree. to, and I told him, I says, you're never coming back.
mm,
And that's it was because by that time I can you imagine I had grown from being a 3 year old into a 5 year old.
mhm.
That tickles me today. A 5 year old could get a divorce. In fact, I just saw on a video where Drew Barrymore divorced her parents when she was a teenager.
Yeah.
So I understand it takes time sometimes to do the divorcing.
Mhm.
So don't be in a hurry. It'll happen when you feel that you're ready to finally say, enough is enough. I've had enough, no more. And I'm going to be on my own. Now, being responsible for myself was huge.
Mm,
I always forced when I was married, I always forced all the big problems onto my husband and I dodged them
mm,
emotionally. And I stayed that little 3 year old in that situation. And all of a sudden, I'm responsible for all, the household repairs and the bills and you name it. And I had to take the reins and grow up and take care of these things. And today I know how to be a responsible person. 99%, you might say, not perfect. I keep getting into scams lately, but the point in, we grow out of it little by little, and every day you get up is a better day than you had before. And when you remember that, you can just keep moving forward.
yes. Yeah, I love that. I love that one of the most common threads in our conversations is really about starting with the self and with your relationship with yourself as well. So when it comes to advice that maybe you would have for someone who feels like they have no safe place to go or no one to turn to for help, would a part of that advice be to really start with yourself and the relationship you do have with yourself?
Exactly. I did not know that's what I was doing when I first did it.
Right.
No, I didn't know about love. My parents were mentally ill. They couldn't love me, so I didn't know anything about love. I didn't know I was abandoned emotionally. I didn't know I was I was um, not cared for as a child. If I was sick, I was put in a bedroom and said, "Well, you can come out when you're well." I had a broken toe. My mother never took me for medical help.
Mm,
So a lot of things happened to me. I didn't know what to do, and how, that I was went to a church that didn't teach that I was worthy. I think that going to the 12 steps was a beginning. And then when I went to the spiritual churches, there were a couple close by me. I started to find out that God loved me, always had loved loved me, and I was a worthy person, and I was enough. I didn't have to be perfect. I didn't have to be looking to others to love me.
right.
I had to learn to love myself. And through when I was going to a spiritual church, I met my spiritual master, and I started going to his classes. And through the spiritual changes that happened in me, that fear-based life was actually being emotionally and physically, emotionally changed
Mm,
mentally while we were having sessions. This is an inside job, and I had to be open to receive love.
mm,
I had walls around me to protect me. Thank you. Don't hurt me. I'm not going to let you hurt me. So I'm going to protect me with these emotional walls and letting the walls down so the love could come in. I was actually stopping what I wanted.
mm,
And actually, that's what was perpetuating the problems with my husband, because when you protect yourself, you're actually sending out abuse to them. You're pushing them away. And what they want is love. Everybody wants to be loved. And I didn't know how to love anybody, less, especially myself. So, through the flower essences and through the programs of doing this, removing my fear and learning how to meditate.
mm,
And when you meditate, God comes in. And when it says, "Be still and know that I am God,"
mm,
gradually, it has taken many years, but gradually more and more of God's love can come in when you're still. That's why our country is in such chaos. It's keeping us out of connection with that love and peace which is within us. We look outside and it's crazy time,
yeah.
and we're afraid, and we shut down from not being hurt. We're actually blocking out the love.
Mm,
So what I discovered is that I had to send love and forgiveness to my husband.
mm,
And you give up the past for a new day.
mm,
I don't have to live in the past anymore. I can love myself and live in the now. Everything with me is okay. It always has been. It was just old ideas that kept triggering my fear. And I don't, today I'm fearless.
mm,
If I'm living in the now, God protects me. I'm okay. Everything's happening just as it's supposed to. And I had to grow into allowing it, take down the walls and allow the love in. And then when you allow it in, you can share it with others. So when you say, "I love you" to somebody, is it coming from your heart, or is it just words from your head? And for me, it was words from my head.
mm.
Today, it's words from my heart.
Nice. Beautiful. I love that because yeah, next I love you mentioning that throughout this conversation because I do want to dive a little bit more into things like the spirituality, holistic healing, and these other sort of vessels that you've used and can be used when it comes to this sort of journey for people and yourself. So specifically though, to start, I would love to hear a little bit more about the role that spirituality and those spiritual churches played in helping you to take those first steps towards feeling free and feeling safe and in tune with yourself as well.
Oh my, okay. The beautiful part of being in recovery and being in groups that are supporting your recovery is, first of all, you're accepted for who you are. I Well, the my first group in treatment for codependency, was a big circle of women, and it was like a counseling circle, and it was for therapy. And I talked about myself as far as everybody was sharing something, and I didn't know what to share because I never had an opinion. I never had, it was always what my mother taught me or said. And I just would mimic what she said. I didn't know how to talk about myself. And so at the end of the session, everybody clumped onto me and said, Marilyn, you got to talk about yourself. I didn't know how. I didn't know how to talk about myself. Talked about my job and my, everything, but
Right.
so I this might sound unusual to some people, but I just somehow intuitively, what came into my thinking at the time when they were accosting me to talk about yourself, in my head is, oh, I don't have a clue what to say. I said, God, you're going to have to put the words in my mouth because I don't know what to say. I'll
Wow.
open my mouth and it's going to be your words. Well, what's happened over time is when you talk from your heart, you start to open up and find the truth inside. The truth will set you free.
Mm.
And so going to those spiritual groups, I was allowed to talk about the real Marilyn
Mm.
instead of the weather. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the opening to be, if you can't talk about yourself and what's really going on, your fears or your anger, I help people today, and this one gal is really, really still angry. I've been helping her for a couple of years, and she's still very, very angry.
Yeah.
And I say, and she says, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I says, no, I says, it's got to leave. We have to be open to let those negative feelings leave. And you need a person like me.
Hmm.
I don't take it on today because it's not about me. It's her just expressing what she has to let go of so the love can take its place.
Right.
And when you go to, in my case, when I went to a spiritual church, we have mediums give messages from the loving sources of our existence, and we can find out those things about ourselves that we need to find out, but consciously you can't identify by yourself. You need to have another person, and they can tell you things that you might not be aware of. That's called denial.
Mm.
I had to come out of a lot of denial, and through going to those uh, uh, I become a medium through meditation, but myself, but I help people to find the deeper issues inside so they can replace it with that love and grace. And so they can become that loving person they were created to be. And
Right.
that's what you hear in spiritual groups is, and I really recommend Edgar Casey's material. I really recommend Course in Miracles, did huge to get me out of guilt and judgment. All those old ideas were to keep me a victim.
Mm.
I don't have to be a victim. I had to change my thinking and open my heart. And in those spiritual groups and recovery groups, you learn to see. I came from no talk, no trust, and no feelings. And so I was the walking dead. I didn't feel a thing because I didn't want to hurt again. So,
Mm.
and I had to learn to express my feelings, not just look like a happy camper when I'm dying inside, but express what's going on inside. And through the spiritual work, I've been able to identify it, release it, and replace it with love and grace.
Yeah.
So I become a different person inside out. And I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
Mm, definitely.
it's an inside job, and we have to be open. And this gal who has this anger problem, um, she's doing really well currently now.
Good.
When you get rid of that inner energy, that negative energy, we have to move into the positive. And when you do that, your life comes together.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, would you say like a big part of that too, in terms of changing your focus and how you process and feel your emotions? It's sort of like you have to kind of give yourself permission or get to a place where you're allowing yourself to feel it and then also learn how to let go of it, like you were mentioning before.
Well, it's exactly right.
Mm,
Um, I listen to a fellow who channels on the internet called Bashar,
mm,
and he several times in his work says you have to give yourself permission.
yeah.
I had to give myself permission to feel love. I have to give myself permission to feel good enough, or I feel that it's okay if I'm not perfect. I'm going through lessons right now where I'm not perfect.
Hmm.
And this, a friend of mine says, well, Marilyn, you're a human being, you make mistakes. Well, yeah, there's nothing wrong with making a mistake if you realize what can I do differently to learn from it.
Yeah.
But when schools call you a failure because you didn't pass their test, you know, then you take on that attitude. Well, you know, I met a person out of the country when I was traveling. I was a teacher in California, and she says I gave up teaching because if the kids didn't pass the test, they saw themselves as failures and they quit school.
Mm,
And so we have to quit seeing ourselves through the eyes of other people,
right.
and realize that's not who we are. That's they're sharing their problems. I don't have to be a sponge and take it on.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of trusting yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of like along those same lines, I'm wondering if what and if any role, was there any sort of like holistic health or alternative medicine practices that you've ever like utilized that played a part in your own recovery and your journey?
Several, many. I fortunately, because of the Andrew Casey program, found out about holistic medicine.
Yeah.
They're very, very big on a diet that works, that's healthy. That it was written before GMOs and a lot of the preservatives and whatever. But you
Hmm.
know, even in those days, they said, don't drink sparkling water or sparkling sodas. Uh, don't. There's several, you know, cut back on your pastry, that kind of, you know, sugar and so forth. So I started out with a diet from their perspective that was healthier. What I discovered is that as time has gone on, the grocery stores today have such processed food, they are not really the same as the original diet that Casey recommended. So
Right.
I try to stay with the organic and the non-GMO versions of the diet. I, in fact, I'm not going to go to a meeting tomorrow night where everybody's celebrating. Well, what drink do you like to drink? And so I only drink water.
Hmm.
Water is water, and water is the only carrier of the nutrition that you eat and carries it to the body through your cells.
Mm,
All the other liquids don't do that
right.
because it's not pure water. It's got other substances in it. So I was taught. um, I've done a lot of healing work, and when we were doing healing for other people, what came up through a session was to put the word God on your water. God is the highest vibration, which is what we're trying to achieve. From the low vibrations of fear, we want to go into the loving vibrations. And so my water has God on it.
Hmm.
And the Dr. Emoto, there are several books that he wrote with pictures showing if you have negative, ugly words, you know, fear, shame, devil, whatever words you put by the water, the crystals are ugly. But
Mm,
if you put words like love and appreciation and gratitude and caring by those words, or they took water out of Lake Lucerne apparently, and those crystals are gorgeous.
mm,
So I drink nothing but God water, or try to. You know, when you're out, you can't always do that, but
mhm.
I do the best at home. It's always God water, and I also found out your chakras. I don't know if you're familiar with the chakra of your system, but they're energy centers and they're probably closed off, shut down. So I started taking cell salt, CELL. Your cells have the consciousness of God within them, just like your heart, they're shut down.
Mm.
And when you start Highlands, Hylands, Highlands cell salts, they open up the different chakras. There's the chakras in your head, in your heart, in your solar plexus, and you know the seven chakras of your body. And there's chakras outside of your body too that people are becoming more aware of.
Mm.
And that when you get them opening, so the flow, see, we're energy fields, and so the energy has to flow. It's like an electric current has to flow, and they've been prevented. It's like a dam. The dam stops the flow of the river, you know, to make a lake behind the river, the dam. Well, you've got to break through the dam, so to speak, and let the water come through, and that's what happens in your energy systems inside. So my holistic health and getting healthier had a lot to do with healing my chakra system. There is a marvelous CD by Stephen Halpern, and if you want to open up your chakras, I just was played. I played it over and over, and just as I did my housework or cleaned the house or whatever, I just kept it on a low sound by volume and let it play and play and play.
Mm.
And a person showed up at our Search for God study group one day, and he was very in tune to what we're talking about. And he says, "Who's been working on your chakra system?" And I says, "Oh, I've been using the CD." Oh, he says, "Well, they're doing a good job," he said.
Mm.
And today you can, without having to take the separate cells, they now have a one cell. It has a pill. They're little white pills, and they just dissolve in your mouth. There's no big problem to taking them. And they have one little pill, and it has all 12 of the cell salts. So you don't have to buy all 12 like I did when I first started.
Gotcha.
And so that was a huge part. If you don't receive the love of God, it's energetically, you're even, all your thinking, all your other work is still not going to produce results. Your whole body, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, has to function.
Mm.
And a lot of people will, yeah, I can, they'll say things that are positive, but it isn't from their heart. So, mentally, you've got to say the right words. Mentally, physically, you have to have your body functioning so the right words will continue the energy flow. Emotionally, you have to get rid of the negative that stops it from flowing. That's the energy of the negative emotions like fear, hate, and shame. And then spiritually, when you're in your meditation, now you can actually be open to the love. So it's
Mm.
it's a whole body. When they say holistic health, you become whole.
Mm.
You're not just physically walking around. There's something inside of you.
Right.
And I'll tell you, it's a long process,
Right.
because just this week, actually, I finally got in touch with the real Marilyn inside. No more barriers, no more blockages, no more opposition to functioning like I'm supposed to be functioning. We were created to function. And I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, and I said, "Oh, this feels different." I said,
Mm.
"This is the real me." So it's taken time,
Amazing.
but there's, how feeding your body physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, all of it with love will restore it.
Mm. Definitely. Yeah, along those same lines, I believe it was honestly, Marilyn, when we did like our first article together, me and you, a couple of years ago, we mentioned something known as the universal laws, and then also our higher consciousness as a tool as well. So I'm just wondering if you can quickly kind of tell me a little bit about universal laws and higher consciousness, and then how those two things can be used to help someone in their own healing journey, whatever that may be for them.
Well, that's a wonderful, wonderful topic. I fortunately, because of the Andrew Casey program that I'm involved with, found this book called Your Life, Why It Is the Way It Is and What You Can Do About It, Understanding the Universal Laws. Now, I have written lots of books based on
Right.
this book. and my books are on Amazon. And what I've discovered is the universal laws are different aspects of unconditional love.
Mm,
The universal law is love. We are created in love, but
mm,
there's so many, the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual parts of us all have to come into love, is which I was just referring to.
right.
And this book explains it very well. And all of a sudden, I better understood. That's when I better understood we're in energy fields. And we have been programmed. My book, A Spark of Truth, explains how we got programmed into fear. Our job on life is to bring our life from the fear into the higher consciousness of love. Higher consciousness is love, is God. People don't understand and they get really hung up on labels.
Mm,
God is a label for unconditional love that created everything. Higher consciousness is another way to talk about love or God, or if you're from a different culture, it might be Allah. The funny part of it is it's not a person, it's an energy.
mm,
And what you label it, it doesn't change the energy. So you can call it higher power, you can call it God, you can call it all that is, you can call it the creator. I like to call it the prime creator because it created everything. So that's, and I don't want to put down things, but religion separates you from that power
mm,
by focusing. That's part of codependency. You look for somebody else to save you, but that power inside of you already, you're already perfect in the eyes of the creation. Everything in the eyes of the creation is perfect love. If you just grow back into it, you can have it too. So it's a matter of raising your vibrations. And so as you raise your vibrations from low energy, such as fear-based emotions or thinking, your thoughts, I can't separate you from love. But with that high vibration, you can do everything. It's unlimited. So when they taught people to limit their ideas, or there's what's your goal? That limit, I've never had a goal.
mm,
I have done more in my recovery than I ever dreamed I would do. When I was teaching school, and I also taught music. But when I was teaching school, that was my goal. I went through college and that limits you.
right.
And when you move into higher consciousness, more inspiration can come.
Mm,
You're not limited anymore. So guess what? I went into recovery and I started writing for the newsletter for Edgar Casey. I started um, doing artwork. I made a trip to Australia and
oh,
started pictures of when I went scuba diving. It was absolutely amazing.
right.
So I painted pictures, took classes for art. I started writing poetry, went to classes for writing and started poetry. And then from there started writing books. I, Somebody contacted me and I started having a radio show. these things,
Oh,
these things just started happening and coming to me, and more as my energy raised and raised, I had more talent and capabilities that I never ever thought I had.
mm,
I don't limit myself today.
yeah,
And so when you get into that higher consciousness, there's no limits and you can do anything you choose to do. It's when you feel safe. See, when you're in the lower consciousness, you don't feel safe to try other things and you feel that you're boxed in. That's what religion takes you, think in the box.
mm-hmm,
But when you're out of thinking in the box, there's no limit. And so the higher power allows you to have a fuller, more expansive life, doing all kinds of activities that you didn't think you could do before. So
right.
it surprises me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that because I never even really thought about it like that, but specifically what you said about goals and setting goals and how limiting that really can be and how it's just like you get there, okay, well, then what? What's next after that? And how
Mhm.
limitless it can be when you just kind of let that go. That's so interesting. So to close us off, and we're going to go into this a little bit more next time too, but we have a question, and you touched on this a little bit before too, which I'm excited to hear more about. But Hannah from California asked about meditation specifically, and how can she use meditation to find moments of peace and clarity while still living in a toxic situation and throughout a healing journey? How can meditation be used as a useful tool throughout that?
Well, it is useful too.
Yeah.
Um, and in a toxic situation, it's absolutely important to know that it's possible. I went to a church that preached meditation was of the devil. You know, you weren't supposed to meditate, and you weren't supposed to listen to the voice inside. That's what my church taught. Not happy about it, but that's where my mother took me when I was little. So there I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got into spiritual groups and discovered that meditation puts you into the quietness, you know, be still and know that I am God.
Mm.
And I didn't know how to be quiet because my life was chaos. He was trying to kill me. I'm trying suicide to get out of it. And my head is running the show trying to survive.
Mm.
I have to get out of my head and into my heart. Meditation is getting into your heart. What's up here was killing me, you know, trying to protect myself, sending out all my anger and whatever towards him because of my childhood. He's sending out all his anger towards me because of his childhood. Well, neither one of us had wonderful childhoods. And so in our marriage, we really didn't know how to do it differently. We just were acting out our parents' problems.
Mm.
That's what domestic violence is, and that's what a lot of life is about. You have to outgrow your parents' ideas and emotions and move into what you truly are. Through meditation, you can do that. You move out of what you're told or they modeled because they're sick people. And my mother was mentally ill, and when she died, she had not learned to leave her religion, so she stayed where she was. And you don't grow necessarily in religion.
Mm.
But in meditation, you can outgrow. Love heals. And when you let that love in, now, when I first started meditating, thank goodness it was in the Search for God study groups with other people. That was part of their routine, is before you closed every program that we went to, you meditated with a group.
Mm.
Now, when you're with a group of people, it's stronger energy. Their energy blends with your energy and you get better answers. And when I found out early in my meditations with the group, I actually got the title for my first book. And I thought, oh, wow, you know, I can get answers in meditation. I mean, I became okay, I'm going to meditate and get some answers. And it's worked. I like meditating in groups. And I like meditating on my own because today I've meditated on my own enough that I have been able to not only get the silent voice comes through. In fact, Archangel Michael came through and it wasn't silent, it was really loud,
Mm.
but telling me about what's going on in politics today. But the point is, you get in touch with the truth when you meditate.
Mm.
And the truth heals. The truth frees you from all the past that you don't have to relive and keep reliving. You can live in the now. When you're in meditation, you are current in your life. The past is not an issue. The presence is not even there yet. There's a saying in 12 steps, with one foot in the past and one foot in the future, you're not in the now, but they
Mhm.
say a little bit more. They say
Yeah, I know
you're
you're not.
peeing on the now.
Yeah.
But the point is, so meditation makes you current. And so the more you put yourself in that silent state, and now this didn't work for me, meditated twice for 2 years, and I said, God, please humbly remove my fear.
Mm.
After 2 years, I got a voice that said, Marilyn, you have to itemize every fear individually and remove them one at a time.
Mm,
So after that, I started in my book, Paradigm Busters. There's a big, big list of fears. And so people can identify their fears and ask to pray them away and replace it with God's love and grace.
mm,
And the first time I felt grace, I was meditating in Death Valley in California,
oh,
wonderful energy. And all of a sudden, I felt grace.
wow.
It was wonderful.
Mm.
I wanted more. And that's how you go into higher consciousness.
Right.
The more you release, the more space for the love and grace to come in.
Mm,
And as you do that, you actually can, in my case anyway, I became psychic. I could give readings for people. And as I continued doing that, I moved into higher consciousness where I could actually connect with angels and masters. And I've actually connected with Mother Mary and Jesus and God at times.
wow.
Your higher consciousness, there's no limit.
Right. Right.
And religion puts you in a box and keeps you limited. So as you go higher and higher, because they want to tell you what to do, you get to listen to the truth and you get answers that you never thought you would ever hear.
Mm,
And they actually bring you into a life of, I had several experiences just recently. See, it's all about vibration, and raising your consciousness is raising your energy or vibration or
mm,
whatever, how you want to define that. And I actually saw the vibrations of the energy in the tree leaves were glistening in the sunlight, and I could feel the vibrations of the tree leaves.
mm,
And as I was driving home that day, I had the radio on. I listened to nothing but classical music because the rest is low vibration.
mm.
So I was listening to a violin concerto, and I wasn't a violin concerto fan, actually. I wouldn't normally turn it off if it wasn't Tchaikovsky or
Right.
Beethoven. um, so I listened, this concerto intrigued me because I'd never heard it before. And so I left it on, and all of a sudden, I moved by vibrations. And as the violin played higher and higher, I literally merged
Mm,
into that higher energy. I merged with those high vibrations. It's amazing how, when you are meditating, you are connected to the universe, and the only thing that stops you is you.
mm. Wow.
And that's the universal law, is that everything is love. And so when I see things today, I can talk to trees, I can talk to the insects, I used to talk to my cat a lot.
Hmm.
I got some interesting answers too. I found out about some of my past lives I didn't know about, that we were together. Your animals are with you in other lives.
Oh, man.
And so when you're in meditation, you get all kinds of information, and you're connected to not limit yourself. You're connected to the answers, and all you have to do is search them or request them, and have, I have an insatiable curiosity, I say.
Mm, wow. Well, that is such a beautiful place to end us off, Marilyn. I have to thank you once again for always taking the time to speak with me and offering all your experiences, advice, knowledge, guidance. It's truly just always such a pleasure and so inspiring to be speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Well, I love being here, and if somebody benefited, it was worth it.
Definitely, definitely. And once again, for everyone at home to watch our first two episodes with Marilyn and to read our publication with her as well, and to check out some of her books online, you can click the links in our description. Once again, I am Eric Mastrota, and this has been Their Journey, a sit down with the National Digest. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye.